Okay. All right. Hello, I'm Kirby. I'm about to speak. All right. When the United States has over 2 million people incarcerated in this country, when the United States has only 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prison population, when 1/3 of African American men are likely to be locked up in their lifetime, then we know that this country has serious problems. In a country that's supposedly the land of the free, there shouldn't be a system in place designed to keep people locked in cages. And in a country founded on the principle that all men are created equal, everyone deserves the decency of being treated like a basic human being. So, what are mandatory minimum sentencing? In the 1970s and 80s, under the presidencies of Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, the war on drugs started taking effect. As drugs, specifically crack, started making their way into poorer, primarily minority communities, this was met by those administrations with harsher policing and harsher sentencing and targeting of these communities. The long sentencing is mandatory minimums. I'm not advocating the use of drugs like crack in any way, shape, or form, but our legal system's principles is based on the punishment fitting the crime, and that's just not happening here. When Atiba Parker does 42 years for her first painkiller offense, and Brock Turner only does 3 months for raping an unconscious girl, when Talisha Watkins does 20 years for her first crack offense, and R. Kelly does no time at all for having over 21 counts of being a pedophile, when Sherman Chester does life for just his second offense, and the judge literally said he didn't deserve life before sentencing him, then you know this system is seriously broken. Even if you do only care about this for selfish reasons, we pay for prisons with our taxes. It would save money to not have it be so overcrowded. But whatever the reason, this needs to be fixed. So, why is such a system in place? Our country was built on slavery. Literally, go to DC and every prominent government building was built by slaves. Slavery was the way that wealthy, white, privileged people asserted their dominance back in the day. It was abolished in 1865 by the 13th Amendment, but in Section 1 of that amendment, there is a sentence saying involuntary servitude is still allowed as punishment for a crime where you have been duly convicted. That little sentence has been turned into a loophole for 150 years to exploit a system and make a modern-day slavery. In some prisons, people work in sweatshop-like conditions for 10 to 12 hours a day, making uniforms and stuff for private prison companies without pay. That's the dictionary definition of slavery. A system in place designed to get people in trouble with the law and keep them in sweatshops for over 20 years for what should be minor offenses is targeting, and that system is systemic. How do I know that this system has its biases? Because I've been through it. When I was 17 years old, a police officer caught me smoking marijuana, and his initial reaction was just call my mom and send me home. And the car ride home sucked, being grounded sucked, all of that sucked. But to put all of this in perspective, around exactly a year previously to my event, one of my good African American friends was caught smoking marijuana when he was 17 years old, and he nearly had an adult charge on his permanent record that he had to fight his way out of in court. So I've seen these things happen, and I know the disparities. So, in conclusion, what are some policies I would come up with to fix this? I think all the mandatory minimums should be shortened to 1/4 of their previous length, like 5 years instead of 20, for example. Less harmful drugs like weed should be decriminalized and should just have fines like littering. All first-time nonviolent drug offenders, no matter the drug, should be given rehab rather than jail because it benefits everyone to have people sober up and rejoin our society productively rather than spending a bunch of money to have people spend 20 years working in a sweatshop for some people. And to start making these strides towards progress, we must look ourselves in the mirror and acknowledge our own privilege like I did previously in the last paragraph, because that's the start to fixing things. People don't want to have these conversations. We must act now to make them. The people that benefit aren't gonna look in the mirror and have these conversations because they want to keep benefiting. But it's time to start talking about this because we currently have a prison population bigger than 15 states and Washington, D.C., and we must stop before that gets bigger than all 50 states. And I know it's hard and I know it's difficult, but just starting the conversation is the first step to making sure that this modern day slavery is knocked down and our country starts living liberty and justice for all. Thank you.